So they get Geno Smith in the building, draft Ashton Genty in the first round. We broke down their draft last year. I called it the most interesting just because the mix of players, the Jack Bash, Dante Thornton combination, right? You've got the physical second round receiver in Bash. You have the deep threat in Dante Thornton, plus the size that he brings to the table. So really love that. Love what they're re-signing Max Crosby, by the way, just making sure that he's there for the foreseeable future, I think is a part of this offseason as well. And then a couple other, moves, trying to get them. Alex Kappa wasn't great last year in Cincinnati, but bringing him in on the offensive line where he's had success in the past, trying to get the best out of him, get him back on track, bringing in Jeremy Chin in the secondary. I think there's still more work to do in the secondary for the Raiders. Again, we're not talking about a one-year rebuild here, but as far as some of the offseason additions, starting with Geno Smith, they're going to be more competitive. The story here, though, like when we were fixing every team in 5 minutes before they made this trade, when we were doing those moves, I said punt on this year. I know Pete Carroll's getting old, but let's do a culture play. Let's get Spytech, 12 picks, and let's just think to 2026. They're not doing that, and I know Raiders fans, they're like earmuffs here for a minute. There's some similarities to when Dave Ziegler took over 2022 season. I said the same exact thing. Raiders punt. Like the Chiefs are the top dogs in this division. Try to compete in a couple of years. And they said, nope, we're trading for Devontae Adams. We're going all in with Devontae Adams and Derek Carr. And clearly that didn't work. So there's elements of that, right? Which is like, let's compete right now. But I don't think the Devontae Adams trade, though, kind of mortgaged a bit of the future for the now. I don't think the Raiders are mortgaging the future for now. But they're trying to do both simultaneously, right? Rather than a full, let's just punt. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying I think they're more competitive this year. The most important thing, though, for the Raiders is let's be competitive in 26 and 27 and make sure that the pieces are in place to compete then. Hey, guys, just taking a quick break to tell you, hey, just over 50% of you are still unsubscribed to Check the Mic. It helps the channel. It helps to make sure that you don't miss any of our shows. So if you have a chance, hit the subscribe button right now.
And let's not overlook, by the way, the first signings, right? The Pete Carroll, John Spytek dynamic coming in to be the new regime. I mean, this was another team that kind of, voluntarily 1 year GM and got rid of him, made a change right away, even though unusual to get like a 1 year, one and done GM, but they were like, no, firm, hard stop. Let's completely move in a different direction. Pete Carroll, really interesting hiring because of his age. In Seattle, I think it was a reasonable call to move in a different direction just because I think he'd reached that point where it's at least a justifiable argument to say he's still a really good coach, but the message has grown stale. Just change for change's sake can have a positive impact. Now, that's dangerous because change for change's sake can always get a lot worse as well. But I think it's at least an argument that's reasonable. But I think he's still a really good coach. He's shown multiple times that he's able to reset the culture of a building, to build a program, whether it's college or the NFL, and move things in a really positive direction quite quickly. So Pete Carroll coming in, I think, will make a significant difference. And then Geno Smith, look, we can debate what he is, but he's not a bad quarterback. He's a good quarterback who tends to play quite badly in the red zone, which completely candidly is a very big problem. That's, in terms of weaknesses to have, that's a really unideal one. But that doesn't mean he has no business, being a starting quarterback, or he doesn't do an awful lot of positive on top of that, right? Geno Smith, particularly, again, remember how bad that interior of the offensive line was for Seattle. Geno Smith is a phenomenal upgrade over anything the Raiders have had for the last several years. Is he ever going to be in that top 8 category that we keep talking about is the target? No, probably not, right? And that is a weakness. He will get you quite far in terms of upgrade, but he's not the answer necessarily long term, but he is a phenomenal upgrade. He makes them immediately competitive. And that is why I think you're seeing the approach that you talked about. They don't need to strip it all back to the bare metal and rebuild from the ground up. They can do this competitive rebuild because Geno Smith makes them competitive, and they can now start adding pieces around him, and they can win games next year.
Tom Telesco, he meant one and done, weird GM hire. He had just been fired by the Chargers. GMs are rarely hired for a second time just the way Thomas Dimitroff was talking about that recently on our friend Ross Tucker's podcast. It's just not a common thing, right? You see retread coaches all the time. Telesco comes in for 1 year. He did leave a couple nice parting gifts, though, in Brock Bowers and Jackson Powers Johnson. His first 2 picks, Bowers at pick 13, JPJ, a guy that we were saying, hey, if Seattle at pick 16 last year would have taken him, we wouldn't have thought that was crazy. I think he backed that up in year 1, that he's going to be a good player. So, yeah, there are some pieces here for the Raiders who I think are moving in the right direction. And a big part of their offseason is, yes, Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, John Spytek, right? We're counting that, I think, in this, resetting the organization and in the way they've done things as part of them having one of the better off seasons here.
They managed to bring back Malcolm Kuntz as well, who was a guy I thought would more than likely escape them in free agency and get signed somewhere. That was a really nice, sneaky, not addition, but like a retention.
Yeah, no, that's a good shout. I mean, again, my concerns, I was wondering if they would be in the Jalen Ramsey sweepstakes, like if they're really going for it. That's not part of the long-term plan, but if they're really trying to be competitive this year, I think they have one of the worst on-paper cornerback situations. I wonder if there is more to do post-free agency here for the Raiders, but I like the direction that they've gone in. And it wasn't exactly what I had predicted, but I like the direction and think they're certainly better for this season.
That's a good shout as well. Like, as much as the majority of the offseason is finished now, we've had coaching carousel, GM carousel, the free agency period, the draft. There is this period, this like second free agency period, right? Where everyone's roster then settles. We see what they've done in the draft. We see the undrafted free agents they signed. And then you get to say, well, what's the last thing we need to fill before we get into the season? And we have all these sort of remaining free agents that are still out there waiting for the phone call, or, maybe the trade deal that can happen based off everything settled. There are still moves to be made, and moves that will be made that, will impact NFL teams heading into the season. I mean, this is the time-ish when James Bradbury ended up going to the Eagles and being a really big part of that team a couple of years ago. Those types of moves are still theoretically out there.
I'm going to call this the James Bradbury period. That's my most famous, most impactful one. A massive need that year for the Eagles at corner. They got him for pennies on the dollar and with no future compensatory pick ramifications. That's the other benefit of the signing the veterans right now. So, or guys who have been released like Bradbury was.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.